the story of the Children of Lir. Our story begins with the 5 kings of the Tuatha De Danann, who met to decide who among them should be their king. Their enemies were powerful, and they knew that they needed to unite behind one leader in order to be strong. King Lir of Shia Fianna in Monaghan was a powerful and popular man with many gifts. As he prepared for the meeting, his heart soared in anticipation of the honor that would surely be his. But to his horror, the other kings agreed on Bov Dearg of Killaloe to be their new king. Bov was the son of Dagda, the supreme deity of Newgrange, and he was said to be a very wise man. The kings hoped that he could guide them through the dark times. When he heard the news, Lir simply couldn't accept it. How could they not have chosen him as their king? Furious, he left abruptly for home, without observing any of the manners or niceties of the day. Many considered this to be a grave insult, particularly to Bov, the new king. Some wanted to use force to command Lir's subservience and obedience, but Bov would not hear of it. He knew that Lir was a proud and powerful man with many devoted followers in his kingdom. To wage war against him would be foolish and divisive. A better course of action must be found, and he commanded that nothing be done for the moment. Soon after this incident, Lir's beautiful young wife became suddenly ill and died after just 3 days. Lir was grief-stricken, but when this news reached Bov, he saw his opportunity to make peace with Lir. He requested that Lir come to his castle in Killaloe and ordered that his foster children, the 3 daughters of Olel from Arran, be brought to Lir for him to choose one as his wife. They were the most beautiful and accomplished women in Ireland. Lir was impressed by the offer and agreed to come and also to accept Bov as his king. A great feast was held to celebrate Lir's return to the fold of the De Danann. When Lir was introduced to the 3 sisters, he was overcome by their grace and beauty. He simply could not choose between them and declared he would take the eldest as this was proper. Her name was Niamh, and they were married soon after in a grand ceremony in Bov's castle in Killaloe. Within a year, they had twins, a boy and a girl. They named them A and Fionnuala. A year later, Niamh gave birth to another set of twins, Fiachra and Con. But this time, there was tragedy, as Niamh died in childbirth. Lir, who had come to love and cherish Niamh deeply, was grief-stricken. Only the love of his children kept him alive. The children missed their mother terribly, but Fionnuala quickly took on the role of mother to her siblings and looked after A, Con and Fiachra as best she could. King Bov had become genuinely fond of Lir and was sad for him. He offered him Niamh's sister Aoife as his new wife. A seemingly beautiful and noble woman, no one knew that she had secretly learned the ways of magic from the Druids. After a period of mourning, Lir accepted Bov's offer, and Lir and Aoife were married at a big public celebration at Bov's castle. They then travelled back to Lir's kingdom, and many more days of celebration followed. The people were happy for their king, though some of them were heard to remark on the coldness of Aoife's eyes. At first, Aoife loved Lir's children, but in time she became jealous of his devotion to them. She bore no children of her own and became increasingly resentful of her dead sister's children. She began to feel that Lir's love for them made her sick, and her hatred grew like a cancer inside. She even tried to persuade Lir to have someone else mind them elsewhere, but he wouldn't hear of it. It became inescapable. She would have to do something. One day she announced that she was taking the 4 children on a trip to Bove's castle. Bove loved Lir's children as if they were his own grandchildren, and Lir was pleased to hear that Aoife was taking the children to visit him. Ordinarily, they would have been thrilled at the prospect of a trip to Bove's place, but Fionnuala was reluctant to go. The night before, she'd had a strange dream, which she took as a warning that danger was ahead. But what could she do? She was ashamed to voice her fears, based only on a foolish dream, and so she had to go with Aoife. They set off in a great party of chariots, horses, servants, and guards, and after some miles they stopped to rest the horses. But then Aoife took her most trusted servants aside, one by one, and offered them a rich reward if they would kill Lir's children for her. Horrified, they all refused, telling her it was a wicked thing she asked. Enraged, she took out her sword and marched towards the children with the intention of killing them, but was unable to commit the deed herself, and threw the sword away in disgust. The party rode on to Loch Derravalla, where Aoife requested they stop to allow the children bathe in the lake's cool waters. The children threw off their clothes, delighted, and jumped into the lake. But again, Fionnuala had a premonition of something awful about to happen. She refused to go into the lake, but Aoife insisted. Aoife then took a druid's wand from inside her cloak and conjured up a spell that turned the children into beautiful swans. There was a great flash of light over the lake, and suddenly there were 4 swans where the children had been. The Children of Lir gazed at the reflection of their swans' bodies in horror. Fionnuala cried out to her stepmother, "What have you done?" Her voice strange coming out of this swan's bill. Aoife laughed. "Ha ha, you are swans now, and you won't be free again until a king from the north marries a queen from the south and you hear the tolling of a bell. You will spend 300 years on this lake, 300 on the wild sea of Moyle between Ireland and Scotland, and a further 300 years by the Atlantic Ocean in the west." Fionnuala swam over to the shore. "Please, Aoife, how can you do this to us? We have only ever loved you and welcomed you into our hearts. What are you thinking of? Please release us from this spell. Please." At the sound of Fionnuala's plea, Aoife's heart melted a little, but it was too late to take back the spell. She offered them one thing to ease their suffering. "I will leave you with the power of speech and the most beautiful singing voices. All people who hear you will be silenced by the beauty of the music you make." And then, able to bear it no more, Aoife turned and headed back for her chariot. She commanded her driver to take her to Bove's castle. The swans huddled together, believing that surely, once their father heard of this, he would come to save them. He was powerful and knew the ways of magic. This dreadful spell could be surely undone. When Aoife arrived at Bove's castle, he was surprised to find her without the children. Aoife told him that Lir had refused to let the children accompany her, as he was jealous of Bove's love for them. Bove found this very strange, for for Lir had always been most welcoming of his attentions towards the children. He wondered what was going on. He called his servant and bid him go to Lir, asking him and the children to join them in Killaloe. When Lir received the messenger, he was alarmed and set off for Bove's castle right away. En route, he passed by Loch Delavara, and the children called out to him. Puzzled, he stopped and searched the lake with his eyes. There were no children to be seen, but 4 swans swam over to him. He got a dreadful shock when he realized that his children's voices were coming from the swans. "Oh, my children, what has happened to you? What terrible sorcery has been done to you?" He cried out in anguish as they told him what his wife had done to them. The spell was too strong for him to undo, and he sat by the shore of the lake and wept with his children around him. He spent the night there before setting off at dawn the next morning to confront Aoife. When Lir arrived at Bove's house, he waited to see what they would say. Aoife wouldn't look him in the eye. Bove asked him where his children were, and Lir replied that they were not with him. Lir turned to Aoife and asked if she wanted to tell them where they were. She shook her head, and Lir said, "It was not me that prevented you from seeing my children, Bove, but this woman here, my wife and your stepdaughter." Bove turned on Aoife in surprise. "What is going on?" She tried to flee, but Lir grabbed her, shouting, "She has turned my children into swans and condemned them to live on Loch Delavara." Bove asked her if this was true, and she was compelled to admit her terrible deed. Furious, Bove cast a spell that turned her into an air demon and condemned her to live in the air forever. Lir returned to his children on the lake and asked them to come back home with him, but they said that they were swans now and that they must stay on the lake. So Lir had a house built for himself by the lake and lived out the rest of his days there with a shelter for the swan children. His only compensation was the wonderful music that the swans made. It enchanted all who heard it and allowed them to forget their troubles. The story of what had happened spread, and people came from all over Ireland to gaze in wonder at the swans and hear their beautiful, sweet music. Eventually, the 300 years passed, and it was time for the children to leave for the Sea of Moyle. They were sadly missed by the Irish, and it was proclaimed that no swan should ever be killed in Ireland. The Sea of Moyle lay between Ireland and Scotland. It was a rough, inhospitable sea, constantly lashed by gales and storms, and assaulted by ice and hail. Soon after they got there, a great storm scattered the children over the wild sea. It was many days before they were reunited. They also suffered many injuries and were often cold and hungry, but their love for each other helped them get through it, with the eldest, Fionnuala, supporting her brother and sisters with stories and words of comfort. They all missed the company of humans terribly. 300 years later, it was time to leave the Sea of Moyle and go to the Atlantic coast as had been foretold in Aoife's curse. The Children of Lir flew back over their home place in Monaghan to find it desolate, with the buildings overgrown and in ruins. In truth, all but very few of the people of Ireland had forgotten all about the Children of Lir. They were truly alone. They flew on to the island of Inishgora near Mayo. There they found some protection from the harsh ravages of the Atlantic, as the island was situated in an inlet and was surrounded by land on 3 sides. Their song was so beautiful that it attracted birds from all over the west of Ireland to their island, and it became a special place, an island of birds. A hermit known as Mac came to live on the island. He had heard the legend of the Children of Lir and wondered if maybe they lived on this island of birds. He built a Spartan monk's cell for himself with the rough stones he found on the island and settled down to a life of contemplation and meditation. Each morning he rang a bell as part of his daily ritual. One morning, the sound of the bell woke Fionnuala. She recognized it and was ecstatic because she knew the bell heralded their freedom. It had been foretold in Aoife's spell. She woke the other swans and told them. Joyfully, the Children of Lir began to sing. Mac heard this wondrous sound and rushed to the lake. Eagerly he called out, "Are you the Children of Lir?" "We are," they answered. The monk was delighted to have found them, saying that he thought that they were the reason he was there. They sang for him, and he came under the spell of their music. He wanted nothing but to listen to them and feel at peace. He asked them to come ashore, and he put silver chains on them so that they would never be separated again. They lived with him in his monk's cell, and this was a happy, contented time for them. They told him stories of their 900 years of adventures, and he wrote them all down so that everyone could share them. Over time, fishermen spread the word of these wondrous talking and singing swans, and people began to recall the ancient legend of the Children of Lir. Soon, people from all over Ireland travelled to Inishgorda to hear the Children of Lir sing. At this time, Leighlin was king of Connacht and was due to marry Dioch, daughter of the king of Munster. This was the event that was foretold to end Aoife's curse. But there was to be one final act in the drama of the children's lives. Dioch heard about the swans and their history and declared that she wouldn't marry Leighlin until he brought the swans to live with them. She wanted them for herself. Leighlin refused, knowing that they were not something to be bought and sold, that there is more to life than the ebb and flow of commerce and consumption. But she took mighty exception to this refusal and threatened to leave him if he didn't bring the swans to her. Leighlin loved Dioch very much and could not bear to lose her, so he ordered the monk to send the swans to him. Of course, Mac refused, and Leighlin was now humiliated in front of his wife-to-be. He now had no option but to act decisively and travelled to the island to take the swans. Mac tried to stop the king from taking them, and there was a struggle. The king grabbed the Children of Lir by their silver chains and tried to drag them into his chariot. The children resisted with all their strength, and then Leighlin watched in horror as their plumage fell away, and the beautiful swans turned into 4 very old people. Leighlin immediately felt terribly ashamed by what he had done and hastened away. The Children of Lir were now back in human form, but they were too old to live. As they began to die, Fionnuala asked Mac to bury them in a single grave on the island. She asked that he bury them standing with their arms around each other, supporting each other in death as they had in life. They died moments later, and Mac did as they requested and buried them in a single grave. He then raised a small stone over the grave in memory of the sad lives of the Children of Lir.